This is world history. In case you forgot what class you're in, this is the first video of week 7. So you should have turned in your week 6 packet, which would have included all the tests and quizzes and homeworks from chapter 21. We've started chapter 22, and we're at big letter B, Hitler challenges European security. Just in case there's any questions or confusion about what the last 2 weeks of school will entail, I've decided that there will not be a regular, quote-unquote, regular exam assigned for this class. There's no reason for you guys to have to do a 200-question exam in which you're able to look at your notes and books and all that to find the answers. So instead, we are just going to finish chapter 22, and then you will take the chapter 22 test, and that will be your final grade for this year. So if you have any questions, please contact me via Skype or email me, and I will help you answer those questions. Let's get back into this. We're at Hitler challenging European security. Remember how last week we see the rise of dictators. Japan we see rising, taking on China. We've seen Italy rising, taking on Ethiopia and Albania. And then we saw Germany starting to rearm itself at this point. They desired Lebensraum, which meant living space. They began rebuilding the German army. They fortified the Rhineland. Technically, it was their territory, but it was supposed to be a neutral zone. It was supposed to be demilitarized, and now the Germans have remilitarized it. Well, now we're at letter B. Hitler challenges European security. Just remilitarizing the Rhineland wasn't enough for them, and so Germany will form alliances. Until 1936, Germany remained politically isolated with the rest of Europe. But with anger of Italian invasion of Ethiopia growing, it drove Mussolini closer to Hitler. They formed what became known as the Rome-Berlin Axis. This was the name for the alliance formed between Italy and Germany. That's worth noting. The next point is the Anti-Comintern Pact. This was, and again you need to write this down, an anti-Russia agreement between Germany and Japan. Japan and Italy made a similar agreement later on, but this is the one you need to remember. And then third of all, we have the Rome-Berlin-Tokyo Axis. This was an alliance between Italy, Germany, and Japan. They would become known as the Axis nations in World War II. I know some of you guys were confused about, wait a minute, World War I, why didn't they talk about the Axis powers? Because Axis was World War II. They were the Central Powers World War I. I should say Germany's allies were the Central Powers World War I. World War II, though, they are the Axis. Their opponents would be known as the Allies again. Number 2, the Spanish Civil War. Fascist Francisco Franco, who lived from 1892 to 1975, Hitler and Mussolini saw Franco as a fellow fascist and provided weapons and manpower to fight its war. Russia offered some aid to the loyalist government who opposed Franco. Britain and France followed a policy of non-intervention. In the end, Franco won the Civil War and became the dictator. So that's what you need to know about Franco. He won the war and became the dictator of Spain. This conflict is sometimes referred to as the dress rehearsal for World War II. In it, Germany and Italy gained the opportunity to try out new weapons under actual conditions and to learn how to use them effectively. Because of this, when war broke out, they would have an initial advantage over their opponents. You guys, many of you have been in the school play, and you guys understand what a dress rehearsal is. It's as if you are performing the actual program, except it's not the program. It's the dress rehearsal. Well, the Spanish Civil War was the dress rehearsal. They were actually performing in preparation for World War II. Number 3, Hitler takes Austria. According to World War I treaties, Germany was not to ever unite with Austria, but Hitler made it his next target. Austria, a country consisting primarily of German-speaking people, had suffered economically during the period between the wars. In 1938, Hitler demanded that a Nazi be installed as chancellor of the country in exchange for their independence. When accomplished, the new chancellor requested Hitler to bring in soldiers to reestablish order. Hitler was pleased to oblige. So Hitler takes Austria. Number 4, Allies trust in appeasement. Remember, the Allies are those who oppose Hitler, the Axis powers, or will be opposing. The word appeasement, in case you need to write this down, has to do with buying off an aggressor by territorial concessions. The Allies concluded that the best way to deal with Hitler's aggressive behavior was to give him what he wanted, hoping that it would be enough to curb his appetite. Also, maybe the Allies were having a little bit of a guilty conscience in the sense that they had punished Germany so badly after World War I. Hitler's demands seemed fair to give back to him because, after all, Germany had suffered so much. Maybe, maybe not, but the Allies thought appeasement was the best option to dealing with Hitler. The Sudetenland, and thing you need to know about the Sudetenland, if you're looking at the map there, it's kind of that dotted green-orange area that you see around the orange country there. That's the Sudetenland. It's basically the land around Nazi Germany. The Sudetenland was the land in Czechoslovakia bordering Germany. If you need to write that down, write that down. Most inhabitants were of German descent. Hitler demanded the ownership of the Sudetenland for the good of all Germans. He promised that the Sudetenland would be his last acquisition of land. Interesting to note, most of the Germans in the Sudetenland had moved there when Hitler rose to power to escape his tyranny. Now Hitler wanted them to be brought back into his empire. Czechoslovakia, of course, opposed giving up any of this land. The Allied leaders included Neville Chamberlain. He was the Prime Minister of Britain. And Edouard Daladier was the Prime Minister of France. Convinced that Hitler would go to war with Czechoslovakia, they called for a conference at Munich to settle the issue. After several hours of negotiating, France and Britain gave Hitler the Sudetenland. Ironically enough, the representatives for Czechoslovakia weren't even allowed to participate at the Munich conference. They were just forced to sign away their own territory. So Chamberlain and Daladier are the two guys who appeased Hitler by giving the Sudetenland to Hitler. In fact, as Chamberlain said coming back to England, this brought peace for our time. Chamberlain returned to Britain believing that he had established peace in Europe. Within a year, Europe would be involved in World War II. Whoops. Letter B. All of Czechoslovakia now falls to the Germans. Chamberlain claimed that with this agreement, Czechoslovakia would achieve greater security and peace than ever before. He believed that Hitler would keep his promises. Few stood up to oppose appeasement. Winston Churchill did. He warned that this was only the beginning of the problems Europe would face. In March 1939, Hitler marched into Prague and seized all of Czechoslovakia. In the past, Hitler had claimed that all he wanted to do was to bring all Germans in Europe under one rule. Several European nations, particularly Britain, felt that Germany had been treated unfairly in the Versailles Treaty. Many leaders regarded Hitler's seizure of German territory as a means of correcting that injustice. In addition, the people of Europe remembered the last Great War. They wanted to avoid renewed bloodshed at all costs. As it turned out, however, the policy of appeasement only made war certain. The end result was, and so you just need to know, Czechoslovakia falls to the Germans. Germany takes over all of Czechoslovakia. It proved that appeasement had failed. Hitler was out to take as much territory as possible, and doing it without firing a shot made it even easier for himself. Britain and France had now been awakened to the real danger and were now determined to use force, if necessary, to oppose further Nazi aggression. If you look at your books at page 488, 488 shows you a map of Nazi and Italian expansion during this time period. All of this territory was territory taken by the Germans and Italians without, well, worrying about starting a world war. Number 5. Stage set for war. The next piece of territory that Hitler wanted was a piece of Poland. If you're looking at the map still, you see Germany and you see East Prussia up there. That area between those two is the area that Hitler was demanding from Poland. He said, hey, I want to have this natural bridge connecting East Prussia with the rest of Germany. Makes logical sense, doesn't it? This time, however, Britain and France supported Poland's resistance. They knew that by giving a bit of Poland to Germany, Germany will probably then try to take all of Poland, just like Czechoslovakia. This time, Britain and France supported Poland's resistance. They even tried to establish a military alliance with the Soviet Union, but that failed to do so because the Soviets made a deal with Hitler. It was called Nazi-Soviet Pact. The reason was because Hitler beat them to the punch. Both sides agreed to not attack one another. That's this Nazi-Soviet Pact. Both countries agreed not to attack each other. Two nations that had been sworn enemies now appeared to be on friendly terms. Look at that picture. They're so happy. A nice piece of Poland. Yeah. Yeah, we can imagine that's not going to last. But as William Shakespeare once said, "'Tis time to fear when tyrants seem to kiss." Paul Johnson, observing this pact, stated that the Nazis and communists resembled nothing so much as a congregation of rival gangsters who had fought each other before and might do so again, but were essentially in the same racket. With this alliance made, Hitler was confident Britain and France would back down when he invaded Poland. That will be his first mistake. That's all we're going to cover for today. For your homework, you guys have a quiz, pages 483 to 489. Hope you all have a good rest of the day. Be good, do good. Bye.